when you're desperate for getting customers and cash, it could be very hard to turn those things down. And it could be easier to try to convince yourself that this is a good fit because they're willing to pay you money, when in reality, it could actually pull you off course.
So Weston, I'm super excited to have you join me for this episode of Coffee with Closers.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Most certainly. Well, every entrepreneur has an interesting story of how they got started. From what I discovered, you started your journey early days working for big corporations in the creative space, and then decided to go on your own and start a service company, and now you're running a product company in the software space. So can you tell our audience a little bit about your journey of becoming an entrepreneur?
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know if anyone has like a typical journey. Mine's definitely not, what you'd think of as a typical journey. Growing up, I liked designing everything. So I always wanted to be a designer of some sort. I like designing shoes, cars, houses, kind of anything. So architecture is what I went into. It seemed to be the best fit as kind of I was also always very like math focused, engineering minded. So I kind of had like the left brain, right brain thing. So architecture seemed like a pretty good fit for me. So I went to school to study architecture, joined a very big architecture firm. After college, worked on designing really big skyscrapers, which is kind of what I wanted to do. It's, very big problem solving type of projects where there's lots of different kind of elements that you have to bring together and find a cohesive solution for. And so that's what I did for a few years at the beginning of my career is architecture. But I did what I wanted to do in that career kind of faster than I thought I would. And I had the itch to just like do more creative stuff, more design, more problem solving. And at the same time, so that was back in like 2011, and there were a lot more apps coming out, and technology was changing pretty quickly. So I started doing some side projects while I was still at the architecture firm, doing like app designs and branding and user interface stuff and some websites. So I kind of looked at, if I want to jump into a different career and test out like what else is out there, I should probably do it now because I'm just a few years into my career. But if I stay here, I'm probably just going to be on that trajectory, and then it gets harder and harder to jump ship and try something else. So I figured, okay, if I leave and it doesn't work out, I could always come back. I have kind of the background for architecture, so that's actually pretty low risk. I actually thought the bigger risk was not leaving and then wondering like, what if, so I did jump ship. I went to a couple different creative agencies in New York. Pretty quickly, was running these cool projects for big brands, coming up with big creative ideas. Same kind of thing, like problem solving, but in a very different space, not skyscrapers. It was more like campaigns for Mercedes-Benz or like a website for Kanye West or, very different things. And then I just kind of build up enough of a base of my own contacts and clients to start my own agency. So just within a couple of years of doing that, I left there and it was just me, and I started my own service-based business, a small creative shop in New York. We did a lot of like branding and marketing materials and websites, and pretty quickly got involved with both like venture capital firms and the startups that they invested in. So that was kind of the network we were in, and we became part of that ecosystem, which worked pretty well for referrals. So that's kind of like the, beginning part of my career that led up to the creation of the agency. And then we ran the agency, grew it. It basically, it grew by like 70% year over year for, I think, 7 years straight. And then because we had worked with so many startups, we would partner with them in different ways. So sometimes we would come in and kind of fill different gaps, whether it was like a need for branding or a need for more product strategy or marketing stuff. So yeah, we would partner with startups. Sometimes we'd take equity in exchange for the cash, since a lot of them are kind of bootstrapped or tight on cash. And through that process, we got a lot of experience building small, companies, helping more on the creative side and the product side and the brand side. And that pretty much put us in a pretty good position to do our own startup at some point, at least for kind of all the things that we were good at and working with those companies. So Morphic actually came about pretty naturally. It started out as an internal product at the agency, and really it was just a tool that we found would be useful for our own clients. So initially we just called it the client dashboard. So we built this platform that the clients could log into. They could download like their logo and design assets. They could click on a resources tab to learn about like which hosting solution might fit better. And those are just little things that we noticed could help with efficiency. So our engineers weren't on 30-minute calls repetitively with clients on topics like that. Or, sending over files over and over and over. Just little basic things. And we started to wonder, because we had done so many websites and projects, we started to see patterns of what worked well. And so we started to wonder, could we actually build into the software, into this platform, automation that actually helps with the design process also? So that was kind of like the origin idea for Morphic. And there are a number of other things happening at the same time. We had a couple customers who they weren't going to be able to make a decision until something was built. So we had to build it in a very flexible way, and something that they could adjust very easily, but it needed to work for their team of non-designers. So we designed this system where we basically broke down the design process and the stuff that goes into a website, all those different components, into this kind of modular toolkit, and then assembled a process where it could be built and customized like on the fly by a non-designer. And so that project also kind of integrated with this automated design idea. And yeah, that was kind of when we started thinking like, okay, we should do what we do with these other startups and kind of go through the same process, treat it like we're our own client, and say like, let's build an MVP and spend 2 months doing it and do some tests, invite some of our potential clients, even test with proposals. Like, we have new potential agency clients coming in. Would you like to go with the typical agency design process for the website, or would you like to use the Morphic process, which in the near term was going to be partially manual and partially on the platform? And then basically we were just finding that 99 out of 100 were going with the Morphic option. And so that was a pretty clear direction that we should probably explore more. And then, yeah, we got our first customer back in March 2021 and just kind of didn't turn back.
It's an interesting story. You were kind of doing product market fit, building the product and doing all of that while you were doing it. I still continue on that topic, but I wanted to go get some clarity on something you mentioned earlier. You've said that early days you would have these startups that would come to you, did not have the funds, but then you would take equity in the business to kind of build their brand and websites. Mm-hmm. We've had similar experience where people will come and pitch that idea, but we shy away from it because we just never had any faith in that founder or in that product idea, right? So were there ever a story where you actually took equity and you actually made money in the process? Were any successful exits?
That's the risk element associated with that, is do you want to turn down cash to take this risk, which is, it's basically an investment. So you're trading your time for this opportunity in the future. We have some very close contacts that are in venture capital and growth equity. So I was able, and we have a few that are actual advisors of the agency. And so I was able to send over potential deals to them to like discuss the opportunity and kind of vet and decide if we want to do it or not. So that was, because I don't have the background in venture capital, that was kind of our built-in way of, assessing companies and doing some due diligence. We also had a really good pipeline though. So the agency was and still is a recommended vendor of some pretty big name VCs. And so most of the companies that we were introduced to, most of them actually had venture funding. So just to clarify that piece, most of them did have money. A lot of them did not also. And those are the ones that were usually more risky because they haven't been vetted by an outside kind of expert. So with the ones that have, have the VC funding, we feel way better about, if we get equity in this company, we're kind of in the same boat as these other professionals who have done the due diligence.
Yeah.
So that's, yeah. And we have had a number of pretty successful ones. And there are a few even that we worked with probably like 7 years ago that are still operating. And at least one is kind of closing in on unicorn territory. So there's, you have to assume though that you're going to lose everything if you do that model. So that's what we did is for every one of those projects, we would actually take the amount of cash that it took us to operate. So we were pretty transparent with the client. And we would say like, this is the amount we would need just to do the project. And here's the amount of cash that we would charge total. And let's convert that to, what it would be if these were, options or something.
Yeah. I mean, that's a unique model. And like you said, you have to have someone who's able to verify if that opportunity is worthwhile. And then you're in it for a very long time.
Yeah.
You may not see a penny for quite some time, right? Meanwhile, you still have payrolls, you still got to feed these people.
Yeah.
And you just can't be doing that as the only way to earn customers.
Venture studio is kind of a cool concept. Yeah, I still like that idea. And I'm, every once in a while we'll have a company that could be someone I could advise or potentially do something like that with. But when we were doing it, it was more trade for kind of these services that otherwise would be, way out of the ballpark for most of these companies to spend at the stage that they're at. So they could basically get access to almost like a part-time full, agency team to join them without really spending that much. So it was a good way to kind of help those companies grow. And the reason we started thinking about doing that also is because we were working with so many of these companies when there was just an idea, and we would help with the branding and the creative strategy and designing the product and building it sometimes, like the SaaS platforms, and then seeing the company raise again. And then we come back, we do website version 2, we do a rebrand, we do the new design of the onboarding flow for the platform. And we're kind of like with that startup as they're growing through those stages. But those were only cash projects. And then we see them exit, and then we're kind of thinking like, we've done this with a bunch of companies and seen it work, and we kind of know what we're doing, but we don't see the benefit of the big exit. So that's where, the idea of building a design portfolio that is also a financial portfolio became very intriguing. And then we also, for our employees, would give them percentage of the opportunity that we were getting. So then our employees, rather than going to work for a startup, they could come work for an agency, which, they have less upside in the stock options. But with ours, they were actually getting a piece of the total portfolio of the companies that we work with. So that was kind of a unique model that was kind of cool.
Probably harder to structure it, right? Especially as a service company, a little bit more complexity in your organization structure and whatnot.
Yeah.
Pretty interesting though. So obviously you saw the opportunity to build a product. You kind of started it as a kind of like an internal process optimization tool, and then later turned into an actual standalone product. Did you raise money to do this, or was it self-funded?
We raised a little bit of cash from friends and family, but not too much. And luckily, we're able to use this pipeline of customers that were coming into the agency and basically filtering them. So I was running, the agency and Morphic at the same time. And then when we have a new customer come in, we could pretty easily assess which one it would be a good fit for. The agency was a better fit for more custom projects or apps or things like that. And Morphic was a better fit for companies who essentially just need to look professional and, build some brand equity. They want a professional digital presence, and they don't feel like they should have to spend $50K plus on an agency to do that. And even if they could afford it, it's not really warranted for most companies. So that's where Morphic thrives, is helping get companies set up with that agency quality setup. But we've found ways to kind of streamline the design process, extremely customized, so it's not template based or anything. So yeah, we were able to kind of define, where should these customers split when they were
Mhm.
coming in.
Understood. And you mentioned that you had, several referral models like venture capital firms that actually had a book of, portfolio of customers that can come to you. And you said by 2021 you had your first customer.
Mm-hmm.
And how did that growth come about? Was it mostly just the agency leads driving the new customers for this platform, or were you proactively doing marketing and selling to actually get the word out?
Yeah, we've it's basically started as all agency kind of referrals from the past, just doing, hopefully good design work, and then getting, people see it and ask who did that, and I need help with this, and getting the intros. And um, that was primarily how we got our early customers. One thing we
Mm-hmm.
started doing with Morphic, which you see on a lot of websites, is the badge in the footer. And so the more sites that are out there that have that badge, the more clicks we get, the more people kind of recognize the name and the logo. So, now, it's like planting seeds now that, we have more and more sites out there. Um, we do get a lot more clicks coming actually directly from the site without having to, get the actual intro.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't really do any initial marketing or sales efforts. It's pretty much been word of mouth, and just recently we started testing out some ads and kind of looking into A/B testing things, and um, we just started a partnership for some leads and stuff. So yeah, we're kind of at the phase where, and part of that reason was we didn't want to, the product wasn't quite ready for kind of a large scale marketing effort,
Mm-hmm.
or ad spend. So I didn't want to go out there kind of making a promise that Morphic is a replacement of your creative agency for these things until we actually felt like that was true. So we've basically been heads down product building for a few years, and are finally kind of at the point where we're like, okay, now we can, I feel like confident that we can go out saying that. Even though we're not done, we're still building stuff and improving and automating. Now we're finally kind of starting that process.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of funny, like the old playbook from I think Hotmail, right? This email was sent from Hotmail or something like that was like the signature that Hotmail used, and then
Mhm.
obviously I don't know if you've heard the story of Calendly. When
Oh
Calendly
yeah,
really took off, it was just the people seeing, oh, this meeting was booked by Calendly. Would you
totally.
like to get yourself a calendar link or whatnot, right? And it's that same model
Yeah,
has really helped a lot of product companies to get traction
yeah. There's a
and brand
lot of
presence.
there's a lot of product led growth in our space, and
Mm-hmm.
there are a number of different little product led growth hooks that we're kind of exploring, and a number of them in the roadmap that we're kind of looking forward to building out, because we have some
Yeah.
different ways of capturing new customers that some other companies don't have, just in the nature of our business. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's definitely, a very efficient pipeline.
Yeah, most certainly. And I think HubSpot also, when they first got into the freemium model,
Hmm.
I always wondered too, like, why would they want to go into $25 a month hosting product, and when they actually charge you, $30,000 plus on, mid-market
Hmm.
product, right? Like, it's just doesn't, it's like the price descript, like the disparity between the small guy and the big guy was just crazy. But I think what they were also trying to do was all these websites actually having this little HubSpot logo that says, hey, go get yourself a free HubSpot website, or
Yeah.
whatever that call to action gave them a lot more
Hmm.
traction.
Yeah, that's
In
interesting. With ours, we're kind of in a similar boat too. We do have, and pricing is like an interesting topic, because I feel
mm-hmm,
like very few people are experts in pricing. It's always very, very unique to the solution,
mm-hmm,
and also very different than the service business. So
mm-hmm,
with yeah, with ours, like we have some enterprise customers. We have our business tier, which is like $6,000 a year. We have a lower tier, which is, you know uh, $65 a month, 50 for the year if you pay for the year
mm-hmm,
up front, or 50 per month if you pay for the year up front. So there's like a pretty big gap there too, and we have some on higher tiers also. But it's the same
mm-hmm,
kind of model where we want to be able to provide that higher tier, You get a little bit more white glove setup and more bells and whistles and features and everything. And then we don't want to block people out. Like part of our mission is to basically democratize access to the highest quality design. And so if you
Mm-hmm.
only have high price tiers, then you're not really doing that. And with our
Mm-hmm.
automation, we can kind of open it up. So the lower tiers, they're probably double what Squarespace costs, but they're giving access to something that is more like what you would get with an agency. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, we're kind of exploring. Yeah, that's kind of a moving target too. And then the footer badge with us is an interesting topic because what we're trying to do with our product is build the equivalent of the creative agency solution versus
Mm-hmm.
the template website builder. We kind of don't want to be associated with template websites because everything that we're doing is attempting to be very customized for each company and very
Mm-hmm.
high quality setup and business grade everything. So the badge we're hoping will be more of an indicator that this is a very high quality material. But in the current industry, typically when you see that little mark at the bottom, it usually means that it's something that someone didn't pay for or like paid less for. So it's going to be there as their way to kind of hopefully drive, more clicks. And, so I think that just comes with building a solid brand, though. Is if that
Mm-hmm.
does start, you see enough high quality sites that have the Morphic badge down there, then you start to associate that with quality, and then when you have one, hopefully you want to keep it. And interestingly, none of the customers on our business tier or up have ever asked to remove it. It's only the customers on the lowest tier who have asked to remove it because they're sensitive about how they think it looks.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's an interesting little.
Yeah, you talked about pricing being, is a very, crazy discussion. Several years back, I don't know if he's still there. His name is Brad Coffey. He was one of the senior team members at HubSpot,
Mhm.
and we were having like a partner meeting, and we were sitting discussing about like this pricing strategy that HubSpot uses from contact tier pricing. This is several years ago.
Mhm.
HubSpot has evolved a lot since then, and then we suggested like, why can't we just do away with this contact tier pricing? It just doesn't make any sense.
Mhm.
Like this is, it's a hindrance when you're trying to sell a software. But he said that's a $600 million question. This is several years ago,
Mm.
because at that time, HubSpot's contact tier price alone was $600 million in revenue
Yeah.
just by charging people for the contacts that are
Right.
in their marketing contacts, right? Like so,
Yeah.
you think about like some simple little things in your pricing strategy, it's a massive thing,
Oh
a
yeah.
few years down the road, right? Like the way that you do. And
That could
I
be
think
a huge lever at scale, even though they're
you just never even
little.
think about it, right? It's
Yeah.
a small little add-on product which just became an enormous line item on their P&L
Yeah.
that it drives it. I mean, I don't know if it costs us them anything more just to have contact tier pricing. Like
Right.
what additional cost, I have no idea,
Yeah.
but it's just like a pure profit if you actually think about it.
Totally.
So yeah, like pricing is a pretty complicated, subject when you actually spend the time figuring out like what is the value you bring to the product
Hmm.
by adding this sort of a special feature, and can I actually
Yeah.
make it a user based, like usage based fee structure, right?
Yep.
Not just like a flat fee subscription or just a flat per seat model, but actually having a usage model which gives you a lot more leverage, and then the customer is finding incremental value by having whatever that usage is, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, pretty complicated when you're a SaaS company trying to figure out what the best way to price and structure. So clearly you built a service company, were profitable, figured out how to make money and serve a lot of customers, and then decided to build your own product company. Now
Yep.
you've had the experience of building two different sort of business models. So having done that,
Hmm.
which would you prefer the most?
That's a tough question. So I would say I think it depends on your personality. I think
Mhm.
I'm more inclined to do the product business where. So we were talking about this earlier. Service-based business, pretty straightforward. Like you can price your services, whoever you know can afford it or wants to hire you can hire you, and it's pretty simple transaction, um, and it's pretty yeah, it's not as scalable. So you can start making money from day one. Like the agency was always profitable because I never, I left the company that I was at knowing that I had clients in line, and only hired new people to join when I knew we could afford it and scale. And so, but it's hard to scale. You know,
Mhm.
you're doing manual services, so that's kind of the obvious, challenge for scale there. With the product business, it's more exciting to think about building something that's scalable that you can bring to thousands or millions of people, but it's so much more capital intensive to build because it's, with a service based business, usually it's just your normal, you need to set up your normal corporate setup stuff and your whatever, your bank account, your health insurance, whatever kind of stuff you
Mhm.
offer. But with a product, you actually have to build the product before you sell it, or you can start selling before you build it. But um, that's kind of the challenge, very capital intensive, and you're kind of in the red trying to get back to the green, and that can take a long time. So
Mhm.
yeah, we decided to not go the venture route, and for better or worse, I think it was the right decision for us, just to the nature of like our company and how much there is to build and the speed, um, how much time it takes to do it. So
Mhm.
I think I would pick product business, but it's definitely a toss up. Agency life is way more comfortable for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think the grass is always green around the other
Yeah.
side, right? So, like, what advice would you give an entrepreneur who's actually starting to build a product company? And what are the things that they need to prepare in advance so that they can actually see success?
Yeah. I would say product market fit is very difficult for people to understand if they've never
Hmm.
done it, like built something themselves or worked at a startup and seen it go from not having product market fit to having it. So I
Hmm.
think trying to get a grasp on that and like really understand what that means is probably pretty important.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of people too, it's very easy to get false signals that you have
Hmm.
product market fit, and um, maybe go down a path chasing something that isn't actually there and find out that it's not product market fit. So I think getting a really good sense for that up front is
Hmm.
important. Um, yeah, I had
Yeah. So,
another
what would be like an example of a false signal? Because I know it's kind of hard to tell, right? Like if there's
yeah,
excitement in your product and people are asking for new features and whatever else, you're like, man, this is, it's got some traction. But how do you know it's a false trigger versus a real interest for the product?
yeah. So I think a lot of those, you see the shiny diamond, like there could be a potential customer that comes in and at first it seems like a good fit, and then something in the conversation kind of signals that there's something different about them than your typical customer. Like maybe they're in a slightly different industry, or they have
Mhm.
a slightly different need for what they're coming to you for. So like for us right now, we don't do e-commerce sites at all. It's mainly professional services businesses. um,
Mhm.
and we can do some e-commerce, but it's the platform's not really built for that. We're not trying to take on Shopify or something. So if we have a company come to us and then they say we want some e-commerce features, generally that's not going to be a great fit. So if you're early in your
Mhm.
business and your ICP is not e-commerce and it's professional services businesses or like growth equity firms in particular or something,
Mhm.
just if you get a customer that's willing to pay you to build new features, even though that sounds appealing, make sure that fits in your roadmap, because
Mhm.
it can, even if you make money and they pay you to do it, it can pull your product in a different direction and it can kind of spread you thin. You don't know then where your marketing efforts go to. Then you have features in the platform that are maybe not a good fit for what your ideal customer actually is. Um, so it's hard. It's when you're desperate for getting customers in cash, it could be very hard to turn those things down. And it could be easier to try to convince yourself that this is a good fit because they're willing to pay you money, when in reality it could actually pull you off course.
Yeah, I mean that's a discipline that you have to have as a founder, right? Whether that's a service company or even a product company, that's a constant temptation that you're dealing with, where somebody has some money in their hand and holding and say, "Hey, do this for me,"
Yeah.
and feel like, "Oh, why can't I just help them?" How did you prepare yourself to be able to say, "This is not the course that we want to take. I'm going to have to say no to this now so that I can have a better future? How are you able to do that?
So for us, it's been a little bit of trial and error. Coming from the agency world, we can basically accept any type of client. Like we we would do all types of different projects, and
Mm-hmm.
so turning down clients was less common. Like having to assess a client as being a good fit would more have to do with um, the little notes in the terms, like can we promote this project. If we can't, it's less valuable to us. But it was less of should we take this client because they're not a good fit for us.
Mm-hmm.
um, the only times we would do that is like if it's uh, a combination of they don't have as much money and it's not going to be something we want to promote or the direction we want to go in. We want really cool brands. We want, the Nikes and stuff. Then maybe you don't
Mm-hmm.
take the accountant firm or something like that. So those are the decisions, but kind of everyone could be a fit. With the product businesses, it's very different because um, the, the, the product is kind of a manifestation of the solutions that it has to provide to the customer. So if you bring in a bunch of customers from different places, your product is going to be in all different places. It's going to be very confusing
Mm-hmm.
for most people. So for us, I think it's a little bit of trial and error where, we think we have a good idea of who the ideal customer is. Um, and sometimes it's not even like a black or white thing. Sometimes it's like, yeah, this is a really good customer and this one's pretty good, but not exactly what our ICP is. And even that
Mm-hmm.
one can kind of pull you away from what you're building. Like in our case, so we have a lot of financial services firms, like the VCs and growth equity and private equity. They all share very similar needs for their, company websites. We have a lot of startups also on the platform. Surprisingly, they have very similar needs,
Mm-hmm.
and a few things that are a little bit different. Um, Interestingly, law firms, which you would think would be more similar to private equity groups for their website needs, actually have more differences with private equity firms than the PE firms do with the startups. And that's
Mm-hmm.
just the nature of, like, I think within the industry, how do you display your team? It's actually very similar in the startup world and the private equity world. It's fairly different in private equity and law firms. So
Mm-hmm.
right there, you're talking about building like a different set of team grid layouts, and they have to connect to the CMS on the back end. Then there are different features. The law firms want more search, and they don't want to display team members until you click a last, the last name, first initial. And
Mm-hmm.
those are not things that any other industries that I've seen want to have. So that's the type of thing where at first glance, those law firms seem like a really good fit for us, but you start to notice the little details that differ. Like that 2% difference can actually like pull you away. um,
Mm-hmm.
so like we're guilty of doing it ourselves sometimes when it's like we have a new potential customer, and yeah, this could be a good way to build a new feature, and then realizing like this feature might just clog up some of the
Mm-hmm.
product. It's not going to be useful for 90% of our ICP. So it's a little
Yeah.
trial and
So that's another thing, right? Like I remember Jason Fried from I think 37 Signals. I think the holding company of Basecamp. I think he actually said, right, like whenever they get feature requests, they were not just rushing to add those features. They're very very selective
error.
in terms of what they put out. And then there are other companies that are like software companies. Like we use a lot of different tools. Oftentimes we have a lot of great ideas and we go to them, and some of these guys are very quick to implement, and some guys are just very slow
Yeah.
to even recognize these ideas. How do you balance the two? Because I think customers do get turned off when you're not listening to their feedback and
Yeah.
want certain cool features that are maybe very important to a good subset of your customer base, right? And you're at the main time
Yeah.
in the same time you got to prioritize what's feasible and what's actually good for the product as a whole.
I think a lot of it's just being intuitive about like the feedback that you're getting, trying to be in touch with the customers and who's actually using it, and like listening more to the ICP than anyone on the outside. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have your own roadmap. So ideally, like you have listed out what you want to build, when you want to build it, how much time it's going to take, and the resources it's going to take. And when you get new requests, sometimes they align nicely to the roadmap, and you can just take this thing that was you know put off for a few months, and you can move it up to make a customer happy because you were going to do it anyway. In other cases, you might say like, yeah, we could build this at some point, but it's very low priority. So there are other ways of like assessing, the importance of a new feature, and uh, there are different systems for this too. Like you can give them scores for, different like how important they are, whether it's something that's a near term urgent thing, but it's not very important, versus something that's
Mm-hmm.
very important, but it's kind of a longer term. It's not urgent.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of different ways to look at it, and then the effort it takes to build things too. So that's where, yeah, you can use numbers and kind of like run a score and stuff. But I think most people will do that, and then they won't like leave it to the final scores to decide which, what you do in the roadmap. That's where you
Mm-hmm.
have to like use your intuition to say, I feel like this is going to be the right direction. And sometimes you just have to do that and like go with your gut.
Yeah, kind of like the Eisenhower metrics you use for like productivity, right? You're trying to figure out what's the best one to focus on.
Yeah.
Obviously, like you have some, I'm pretty sure some very very aspirational goal of where this product is going to be in the future and revenue wise. What's kind of your vision of the future? Are you looking to stick around, build this company to a certain size, get acquired, or what's the goal?
Yeah. I think the goal, there are probably like different goals and scenarios. And like I said, we haven't taken venture money, but that's not
Mm-hmm.
off the table. Like we're kind of, keep some, friendly conversations going and stuff. So I think, um, it's kind of an ongoing question. Like, do we want to build this,
Mm-hmm.
some massive business? I think my personal goals are like less associated with the scale or like
Mm-hmm.
valuation of the company, and more with like what can we build and like what can it solve. And then
Mm-hmm.
if we do a really good job with that, then naturally it it will make money if it solves problems. So
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, I can see kind of multiple scenarios. I'm a solo founder also, so I don't, I don't really think about the equity piece that much, in terms of like growth and an exit. So I think
Mm-hmm.
overall, the end goal probably is to have Morphic acquired at some point, um,
Mm-hmm.
as long as we found like a good home for it and stuff. And but on the bigger vision of the product, I think what we want to build is essentially an automated creative agency that
Mm-hmm.
does everything that you would expect a full-time expert team that knows everything about your business, and they're working for you. Um, you can ask them anything and they can do it for you basically
Mm-hmm.
instantly. That's kind of like the big picture goal. And if we can achieve that, then I'm sure the success will come.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, there's a lot of large players in the space of CMS and website build.
Yeah.
HubSpot has basically building a pretty massive CMS system that, based on prompt, can build websites. You have Wix. I think even at HubSpot, what's the other company? Not Wix. There's another one. Um, uh,
Yeah. There are a
uh,
number of them.
yeah, they're becoming Webflow, right? Webflow was exhibiting at Inbound just last week. Even I think GoDaddy and all these platforms are actually coming up with the easy to build websites and CMS.
yeah.
So you can lose heart pretty quickly when you see these giant players with massive, bank accounts investing heavily into these sort of tech products,
Yeah.
where you are a small guy trying to build this all by yourself without having to take any money.
Yep.
So how do you keep a positive, attitude and say, well, I'm not going to get deterred by these big giants. I'm just going to stay focused and build this product. How do
that's
you keep that mind as an entrepreneur?
that's one of the challenges of entrepreneurship in general, is like crazy ups and downs. Because
Mm-hmm.
like in the morning you might be making your coffee being like, oh my god, this is amazing, like we're gonna crush it. And then yeah, 2 p.m. rolls around and you see like a news article about some company that's doing something somewhat similar to what you're trying to do, and then you're yeah, should I give up? So yeah, I mean, that's an interesting thing, but it's exciting though. Like you don't get that as much from the service businesses.
Mm-hmm.
That's a little more kind of
Yeah.
stable, and so there's something nice about that. But um, that's just the reality of entrepreneurship. Is you have 1 foot into the land of failure and 1 foot to the land of unicorn, and you're like, which way are we leaning? I can't even tell. uh, so, but for us, like, there are a lot of website builders out there, and technically, like, Morphic can be categorized as a website builder. We have some other, like, kind of products within the app also for building marketing materials like social posts and business cards and stuff. And I think what we're doing, there are a couple of things that make me feel better about it when you like look and see all these others with funding and they already have customer bases and stuff, is what we're doing I think is pretty different. Because we're building something that is, it's incredibly hard to build. I don't really see other people building the same type of thing, and that's something that has the creative solutions and proven processes, that can execute and explain designs to the end customer and do very custom designs. That's something that's pretty unique. If you go look at a lot of the other, you know, AI powered website builders, from my perspective and the perspective of our customers, they would never use them because they don't actually give them what an agency would. And so from that perspective, it makes me feel pretty good about it. From what I'm seeing, there's a lot of awesome stuff happening in AI, and I think we're building some really cool stuff too. But a lot of the products that are out there, I think, are relatively unimpressive. They're slightly improved versions of what they were previously. I mean, unimpressive in terms of the AI capabilities. Many of them are like awesome products, but I think they're basically template builders that have added solutions that help with little tasks here and there, but they don't build the collective creative brain inside the product. That's what we're trying to build, is this super intelligent designer that knows everything about your company, so that whatever you need, it knows how to do, and it does it immediately and explains it to you and can take feedback. That's something that makes me feel better about it, because I think it's also, as a big company, it's much harder to turn the ship. If you're already going in a direction, you have revenue, and you've been building something that's successful for a while, that would be a pretty big shift to go from a template builder solution to a totally like reconfigured agency model process. So yeah, there are a few different things that
Yeah.
make me feel good
And you
about it.
could,
And the other thing is, we don't have to be the biggest website builder company in the world. Like, we could still build a very successful business, and we could still be a unicorn, and there are going to be many other unicorns also. And our solution might be catered more towards professional services businesses and the ones who really want to put their best foot forward, whereas some of the others may cater more towards the designers or the people who, they know what they want to build, and so they go build it. But our platform is you know, it might just fit in a different niche.
yeah, I think you're having your unique place in your marketplace, right? Understanding that and building for that unique customer base, right? I think that's the key to success.
Yeah.
So obviously you've had, a tremendous success as an entrepreneur, built multiple companies, have seen a lot of things, coming into place. Knowing what you know today, what advice would you give the younger Weston?
I think I would probably say to look very broadly at everything. So kind of widen the horizons. When I was in architecture school, I was like 99% sure I was going to be an architect. And but I kind of had other interests, like I took like one of the first entrepreneurship courses at Cornell, and I like absolutely loved it. And there were only like 2 other classes, so I did those, but it wasn't really a thing. And when these shifts happen, like right now, AI has become a big thing. When I was in college, the iPhone came out, and that was a big shift. And my engineering friends in school were starting to build things that were actually creative and very interesting solutions in engineering. And if I could go back, I would probably switch schools from architecture to engineering, because it's very hard to bring a creative mindset into an engineering focused space. And I think that, for me, and specifically, that's probably what I would recommend, but for others, if you kind of make that, open up to other people, then the message would probably be to just like keep an open mind in things. Try not to bucket what your skills are and assume that has to be a certain job position or something like that. I think we're seeing it more and more now. Like our parents' generation was much more of the, traditional path where you go to school for something, then you work that same job or in that same industry your entire career until you can retire. And now there's so many more options and access to information and different ways to learn things. So I think that's kind of naturally happening anyway.
Yeah. I think that's kind of what I'm trying to instill in my own kids as well, right? Like you kind of have to find what your core competencies are as early in life as possible, what your interests are, and try to get better in areas, right? And grow in those skills.
Yeah,
and colleges doesn't necessarily have to be the path.
Right. I think that's changing very frequently now. The other kind of way to think about this general sentiment is build your own career. You don't have to go into a traditional path of some sort. That's kind of being broken down a lot. And so I was thinking about that with our oldest daughter also, is like she wants to do many different things. She's only 6, but like she has all these different interests. And it's kind of cool to think about that, like in 10 years, if she is thinking about going to college or something, it may be very, very different. And it may be much more of the build your own future, create your own job type of mentality versus go get trained in a discipline and find a job somewhere that does that,
Yeah. I think it's partially the entrepreneurial spirit in the family too, right? Like you're an entrepreneur, so you can encourage that more than, like you said, most traditional families are encouraging them to go to school, get a degree, stay in that job and build a career and, climb the ladder, right? But I think that is changing a little bit, but I think it also comes down to your parents influencing your children too.
Totally. My parents were definitely a direct influence. My dad was a designer who worked for himself, and my mom managed designers and got them business. So that's kind of, and so they worked for themselves and my mom managed my dad,
That's a good combination right there.
Yeah.
So how where can people hear about you? Where can they learn more about the Morphic platform?
Yeah, so they can go to getmorphic.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. Just search Weston Baker. I think I might be the only one. I don't know. There may be others. But yeah, we're on some socials. But website is probably the best.
Sounds good. Well, I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much for sharing a little bit about your life lesson from having built several companies and advice for our entrepreneurs. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
This episode of Coffee with Closers is brought to you by One IMS, a leading digital marketing agency helping businesses win new customers. To request a free marketing ROI audit, please visit oneims.com. If you enjoyed this video, please share it. To make sure you never miss an episode, please subscribe.